Welcome. I'm Kinetic Symphony. I hunt down and report on mysterious and weird, true stories, from glitches to the paranormal. Case file number 459, written by Stepfa 421. The Secrets of Mark, the Warlock. This is a glitch that I have thought about a lot over the years. I have no explanation. It was just a weird thing that happened. It was 2011. We were 16. My best friend and I were in town, wanting to get some McDonald's. Her card declined, so we were walking to the bank opposite the mall. While we were crossing the road, we saw her older brother's best friend, Mark. We both yelled out, "Hello, Mark." I yelled out, "Nice shirt." It was a lion with flames around it. I remember very well because I had a huge crush on him at the time. He ignored us completely, like he didn't even hear us. We both commented about how rude that was. We finished crossing the road and got to the ATM just on the other side. While there, Mark comes along from the opposite direction. He's wearing the same shirt. We asked him how he got there. We just saw him cross the road and it hadn't gone again, so he couldn't have crossed again. He is very confused and said that he just came from the opposite direction. He hasn't crossed the road yet. I mentioned this to my best friend a week ago, and she remembers the same thing that I do, in the same way. Case file number 460, written by EmMothRa, Secrets of the Long-Lost Pendant. My favorite story, personal to me, is of my duplicated or returned pendant. In our family, we have a particular pendant that we buy each other as gifts. It's beautiful Isis wings, the Egyptian one, not the terror group, which surrounds a hank. They are hard to come by and have to be handmade. When my daughter was young, she used to pull at the necklace, and one day she must have pulled too hard, and on returning home from dropping her off at the nursery, the necklace was undone and the pendant nowhere to be seen. We searched everywhere and retraced my steps. I was devastated. It wasn't something that could easily be replaced. That Christmas, my mom surprised me with a new handmade one to replace the lost one. Fast forward now, over 10 years. We have moved houses 3 times since then. On the 3rd house move, I was unpacking and went to put my earrings away, which I had put into a little pouch. I emptied the pouch onto our kitchen table to sort out the pairs, but what should be there but my first pendant? It was covered in what I can only describe as a layer of grime. It cleaned up well though, and now has a little home hanging on my candlestick stand on my dressing table. Never sure whether this is a glitch or a little returned gift from the universe. Case notes, file number 460. That little detail you mentioned of the pendant being covered in grime is very peculiar. It's not typical for returned items to be different than they were when they were lost. Makes you wonder that wherever they go, if it's more than a simple out-of-phase instance. In your case, it must be, since the item was returned after moving multiple times. It was tethered to you in some fashion, beyond merely reintroducing itself into the material world in the same location it initially vanished, which is typical in DOP. What could the grime mean? Is it a residue effect in an object's travel while out of phase? Maybe there are other beings in this out-of-phase pocket of reality. Beings that are able to see us, and the grime represents wear and tear from the exposed area when moving through it. Creepy file number 2, written by PerpetualConnection. The mystery of the hunter becoming the hunted. I'm a hunter. I like to hunt wild boar specifically. Though I have been deer hunting and have been known to get a turkey for Thanksgiving, I mostly hunt boar. For those of you that don't know, boar are a big problem in the United States. A sow can have 2 litters a year, and it's not uncommon for a litter to consist of 10 or more pigs. Given that pigs eat anything and everything, it's not hard to see why the Department of Fish and Wildlife makes it legal to hunt them with almost no restrictions. In my state, it's illegal to hunt most large mammals with night or thermal vision scopes, with the exception of boar and coyote. I'd been saving for a year, mostly fun money. It's hard to explain to your wife that a scope that cost literally twice as much as the rifle I was mounting it on was worth it. But I did it. I managed to convince her. I took it to a range and sighted it in. There was an area that was peppered with boar activity that I knew would be perfect for a night hunt. It was easily accessible with my truck, with easy to find spots that I could set up in, that overlooked a large easy to navigate clearing. The night started uneventful, mostly me tinkering with my new toy, cycling through the settings. I was a little impatient. I'd spotted multiple deer, but they were out of season, and like I mentioned earlier, my current setup wasn't legal for deer. I moved to another spot I'd seen days earlier that probably wasn't much better than my first, but it gave me something to do and a new angle to look around with my new scope. After an hour or so of glassing the area, it dawned on me. This spot doesn't have much animal activity at all. No rabbits or owls. The deer that I'd seen were hundreds of yards from where I was. Why was this pocket of land so dead at night, but lively in the day? I'd set up around 10 p.m. and it was about 2 a.m. now when I started to think about packing up, maybe setting up a target before I left and taking some practice shots. I heard a crunch come from the direction I came from before. I planned my scope over and saw the silhouette of a small bear pushing through the bushes. It's important to note that my scope isn't exactly night vision. It's a thermal scope, kind of like a black and white version of what you see in the Predator movies. I adjusted my range and zoomed in a little. I remember jolting a little when I saw that it wasn't really a bear, it was a man. Because he was so low and hunched over, I thought I was looking at a young bear. Is that a game warden? It couldn't be. I would have seen the headlights coming up the road from where I was perched. And where could he have walked from? I was 30 miles away from anything and on public lands. I was about to call out when I adjusted my sights and noticed he was naked. No shoes, pants, or anything. I remember being disturbed by his movements, like a squirrel or something, twitchy and grabbing at foliage, sniffing around and palming the tree. Was that my tree? The one I'd been leaning against earlier? The thought terrified me. Could he smell me? Then he did something I still have nightmares about today. He squatted and placed his hands in the dirt between his feet and stared straight up like a dog mid-howl. And I heard it, a voice coming from that direction, a very compelling female voice.
Help! Help!
There was a long pause, but neither of us moved a muscle. The center of my sights was trained on the dirt in front of his feet. I couldn't bring myself to aim directly at another person. It went against everything I'd been taught about firearms. Were they lost? Was this some guy that had gone crazy out here? Why was his voice so feminine?
Someone help! Help!
The voice called out. That's when I knew it was nonsense. Not only could he walk, when I first saw him, he was traversing the land with ease for a naked person. So good I mistook him for a bear. That's a freaking trap. This guy is trying to lure me to him with a damsel in distress routine. Luckily, the lack of activity before had caused me to pack up most of my gear. I think I may have left behind a hat and a sitting pad, but didn't give a crap about that at the moment. I took my eyes off him for a moment to get my pack on. I buckled my chest strap and scrambled for my rifle. To my horror, he was in the same position, but his face was staring in my direction, and I swear I saw a smile. The thermal scope has an effect that makes the animal's eyes appear white. How the hell had he heard me get up and put my gear on? He must have easily been 150 yards away. Damn it! I screamed in that direction. He stood upright, and it hit me how tall and skinny he was, easily 6 feet and very lean. He took a couple long strides in my direction, and I instinctively sent a round sailing above his head to the tree line. He was freaky as hell, but he hadn't really threatened me. What would I tell the cops? I was unwilling and unready to shoot someone. He stopped dead in his tracks and hunched down on all fours. The next one will mess you up. Go away! He stayed on all fours, and this time I had my sights trained on the center of him. His eyes were just above the grass, like a large cat or something. I was trying to stop my trembling and knew that my voice had cracked a little on the last warning. I was terrified. That standoff probably only lasted a minute or two, maybe less, but it felt like forever. In an instant, he bolted left towards the tree line opposite the road. So much for not being able to walk. I could barely keep him in my scope. He was moving so fast. He disappeared into the brush, and I sent another bullet sailing high in his direction. I racked another round and tried to pocket that mag and swap for a fresh one, but I dropped it and didn't bother looking for it. I wasn't far from my truck, and I just wanted to get out of there. I could hear him in the distance, yelling in this weird sound that could have been a laugh or a cry. I scrambled up the trail and arrived at my truck breathless. I tossed my gear into the cab but kept the rifle in the passenger seat and sped off. For the longest time, I told that story from the perspective of having spotted some deranged crackhead living off the land like some kind of caveman. I reported it to Fish and Game, but all they did was scold me for hunting at night alone, never receiving an update. It wasn't until I told this story on a camping trip that my nephew told me about wendigos, rakes, and skinwalkers. My story scared the piss out of him because the spot we were camping was technically the same forest I'd seen the bastard, just 50 miles east of it. He was so spooked his mom, my cousin, had to take him home. She was really pissed. I'd gone down the rabbit hole one of these scary stories. I'm not saying what I saw definitely was a wendigo or a skinwalker. I'm saying that if such a thing exists, I may have dodged quite the bullet that night. Or maybe it was just a tweaker doing a Donnie Thornberry in the middle of the night. Either way, I thought I'd share.